Hi readers, Lee here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my September reading recap. Buckle up, folks. We've got a lot of books to talk about this month. I'm not going to put the links to the books down in the description box. I do have them in my weekend books videos, but there are 25 books and that's a lot. I don't even know how I read that much this month. But first of all, in the comments section below, I'd love to hear about your September reading month. How did it start? How did it go? How many did you read? What was the quality like? My September reading month did not get off to a great start. I was doing the Booker Band project, and one of the Booker books, this did not make the short list, and I'm glad. The Strange Eventful History by Claire Messud ended up being a DNF for me. I called it a DNF, but I did go and read the end where there is some scandalous reveal, but by that point, I did not care. What I wrote about this book, and this is my experience of it, this doesn't captivate me the way My Friends did by Hisham Matar. I keep feeling I'm on the verge of learning some history, and then it just skips past it, and it skipped past over and over and over. So at the very end, like I said, I didn't care about the scandalous reveal because I was just so tired, it didn't seem relevant to the story. Anyway, I don't want to get angry at that. It was just not a fit for me. And apologize, you're going to see some sun because it is late evening and I might have to do some scooching around. The next book that I read in September was better than The Strange Eventful History, but it was not perfect. It wasn't great. It was just okay. That was Disclaimer by Renee Knight. I was fooled into buying this because I thought it was recent. It was copyrighted 2015, and Barnes & Noble was recommending it as their book of the month. Nothing wrong with discovering books from 9-10 years ago. I just thought it was more recent. And again, another just okay novel. I kind of figured some things out about this, but it was much better an experience for me than This Strange Eventful History. So, if you like a good mystery, I do recommend Disclaimer. Next up, things start to get better and better for a while. I read the final in the Thistle Grove series that is Rise and Divine by Lana Harper. This was, again, not my favorite. I think at the beginning, gets really... I feel better about this now that we're at the end of the month, and this is something I read at the beginning. But I'd had a productive morning, and the weather was Thistle Grove's early fall perfection, vibrant and flawless as a stained glass window. Ladies and gentlemen, can we, rein it in with the descriptions? It's like all these metaphors, and it is just overly flowery, and let's rein it in a little bit. But once I got past her describing everybody, I really enjoyed the book. Really, she gives a good description of what depression is like, and I just wish she had done the same without being so flowery in the earlier parts of the book. Satisfying conclusion, not the most satisfying conclusion I had this month, although that's kind of punny, as you'll see. Next up, in Patreon book club with Mother Horror, she was reading The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. One of the things that I find about Gothic is it reads really slow to me, and I think that's why I don't get the suspense. It works better if you're watching it because you've got the music, but I'm more impatient, kind of let's get to it. However, the ending of this book was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And I actually wrote, when I realized what was about to happen, I wrote, no! Exclamation point. It was just getting there took a little bit. I would have liked the pacing to be just a tad quicker. Now, in October, I've got some Gothic-ish books that I'm planning to read, and I'll see how they are. These are new publications, so hopefully they do have a little bit quicker pace. I have another one that's billed as Gothic somewhere this month. It again lagged a little bit, but I'll talk about that. Anywho, The Woman in Black is great. I DNF'd the movie because the movie veered too far, at least as far as I watched, from the book. And other people in the book club watched the movie, and indeed, it totally changed the ending and the beginning and some major character points. So that's a no for me, dog. The movie. The book was great. Highly recommend it. While I was reading The Woman in Black, I got the Ghost and Mrs. Muir vibes. This came without any kind of dust jacket. This is how it was sold to me. I've got 2 copies just like this. I've read the movie. I've read the book several times. I find it a delight. I have watched the movie several times. I find it a delight. Even though there are differences in the movie from the book, it's always going to be that way. This is a love story, but reading The Woman in Black with the water and the Gothic vibes reminded me so much of this and the seaside and the vibes that I got. Like I said, it's a love story, but it is a sweet love story. Really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend this. This is a book that I could see myself reading 1 or 2 more times before I die. Hopefully not soon. Next up, again, I said it starts getting better and better, and then it kind of levels out for a bit, and then it gets better. So, kind of the culmination was Kristin Hannah's The Great Alone. I love this book. When I read books, despite the fact that I say I'm not going to, I go look at the reviews and I listen to people bitch and moan because everybody's got an opinion. I do too. But I loved this. There were some, wow, I didn't see that coming moments, and is that a little too much moments? But I ended this book wanting to go live and scrap a livelihood out of nothing in Alaska, and that's why it was effective for me, because no way in hell am I equipped to do that now or ever. So the fact that she made me want to do that, even though that is not realistic for my life, means she wrote good enough for me to want to do that. So now I've got to decide, does this go in my favorite books of 2024? I'm not sure. I'm going to sleep on it. I can always put it on that pile and take it off later if I realize I've done that already. Next up, for a book club, I read Under the Whispering Door. This was a cute novel. There were things that I liked about it. This is for a different book club, an in-person book club. There were things that I liked about it that I lost my train of thought. I started this book and was impatient with it. I did not like the main character. I wasn't sure what was going on. But I cried my way through the last half of the book, so overall a success. I think I'm going to need to be in the mood to read something else by T.J. Klune. I haven't read The House in the Cerulean Sea. I've got a copy. I don't know when I will read it now. Not because this is bad, it's just, okay. And now we start going down again. Another just okay book was Haunt Sweet Home by Sarah Pinsker. This had every element of things that I like. It has haunted houses, it has a reality TV show, it just something about the pacing and the writing style just didn't work for me. It was just okay for me. There was something that happened to me that was very transparent. I knew something was up with that individual all along. And so it just ended okay. Now we came to not the biggest disappointment. That was this Strange Eventful History, but the biggest surprise disappointment and a DNF. This was not DNF'd. This was Nora Roberts Morgan's Cross. I did a video earlier in the month about vampires, and so I thought, let me read a vampire book. Oh, I've got this by Nora Roberts that I haven't read. It's the first in a trilogy. I had to drag myself to the end of this book. I considered DNFing it, and that is such a surprise to me because I love Nora Roberts. I don't know what about it didn't work for me, but it was a big no. I started to read the second book in the trilogy, and after a chapter, I was like, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I cannot read anymore, and I'm so surprised that that happened. So I went light next. I went Christmassy. How can that be fucked up? And it wasn't. In a Holidays, I mean, look, I could nitpick. I could say, oh, well, this, and that. But In a Holidays by Christina Lauren was really refreshing. Anytime I read anytime I DNF a book, I need something that I know is going to lift me up because I'm sad and disappointed and a little disgusted. So In a Holidays was just that. If you need a palate cleanser, something that's not so serious after a heavy read or after a DNF, I do recommend In a Holidays, if you like romance. Next up, I finished an audiobook that I started mid-August. That was The History of Sound by Ben Shattuck. I absolutely loved this. I highly recommend it on audiobook. This is stories. They're all linked together, like one story may start with one thing and then it's mentioned in the next story. The third story may or may not be overtly connected, but at the end it's all wrapped up in the final story. Loved it, loved it. It came with like a full cast narrators, and this gave me the idea that I might start consuming story collections via Audible because I don't do well reading them. I do recommend this. I wanted a physical copy because I actually made some tabs. I didn't do it for the whole book because I didn't have the book with me a lot of time. I was listening to it as I drove. But I could see myself reading this or taking it on a trip where I could read a short story at a time. Recommend. Next, this was the book I started at the beginning of September. My fiction selection, Home Before Morning, the story of an army nurse in Vietnam. I did a Women in War video last week or the week before about Linda Van Devanter. I'm so glad I read this. It was heartbreaking. It was a hard read, but it was, for me, so relatable. Recommend. This was also used as inspiration. Jesus Christ. Sorry about my phone. It's probably spam or something. Inspiration for Kristen Hanna's The Women, which pubbed earlier this year. Next, yep, sure is spam. Politics. How do they get your number? Next, I discovered the Iron Lake, the Cork O'Connor mystery series, and I enjoyed this. This was a slow burn, but the writing was so well done. This is the first of the series. The writing was so well done that I didn't want to put it down. I've read other books that dragged and that were slow, but that was different. The writing was not as good as it is in this book. Now, I talked about this in my weekend books, and a watcher commented that she didn't know how she felt about William Kent Kruger writing about a culture that's not his own. And when I I don't know if I actually thought this when I picked up the book, but I thought, oh, maybe he, like his main character, is mixed. But then after I saw that comment, I went and looked, and no, William Kent Kruger's not mixed, but he does admire the, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's real, Native American culture, whose name I do not remember and can't find really quickly, partly because I can't see that well. So that inspired me to do a Book Talk Tuesday and buy more books written by Indigenous or Native American authors. That should have posted yesterday, I think. And I'm going to start October with one of those books. I'm really excited. It's a mystery series set close to or near where the Iron Lake series is set. Don't quote me on that. So I'm going to continue on with him, but I'm also going to restart that other series and I would say expand my repertoire, but I do also talk about books by Native American authors that I have had already read. I do also going to work on my awareness because of that. When I was looking up videos books for my video, I remembered a book about an Indian detective, Native American detective. I can't remember where it was set, so I went to look on I could, for some reason, remember the author's name, and it was a white woman with no Native American heritage. So I'm going to pay more closer attention to that and really seriously consider and do my research into the author and see if that's someone I want to support or not. Because Iron Lake, and I still will read the William Kent Kruger. He seems like he is doing it from a kind place and an awe-struck place, not a place of, I'm going to take what's yours and make it mine. There doesn't seem to be any malicious intent, if you get what I mean. So, Iron Lake was a slow burn. I needed something light. I got the Bromance Book Club by Lysa Kay Adams. I bought the whole series, and boy, it is light, it's cute, it's funny. If you need a no-brainer, well, I would have saw it on Instagram today, a potato chip book, a book that you just consume and you don't get too serious about. This is that. It's not fine dining, but it's fun dining. Okay. Oops, sorry. I was like, so total of 25 books. That's a lot to talk about. Next up we're at like the 21st, I think, of September, and it was Stephen King's birthday, and so I did a reread of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and I loved The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon much more the second time than the first, and I think that it has to do with growth and change and me just understanding the world more. I was awed by this little girl's resilience, and she was 9 years old. I would have died, literally died, at 9 years old had I been lost in the woods. If you've not read it, I do recommend it. It didn't scare me. Nothing in writing scares me anymore, sadly. So, after that, I'd gone into the bookstore because sometimes my Barnes & Noble will get a book that's set to publish that Tuesday the weekend before. So I went in with this on my mind. A Jingle Bell Mingle by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. This was the final in a trilogy set in Christmas Notch, Vermont. I love the trilogy. When I started reading, I'm like, am I going to be sad because the trilogy's ending? But they wrapped it up so perfectly. They put a bow on it at the end, and it was just perfect. Perfect. Loved it. Very, very spicy. I had to skim through some pages. I'm not much of a spice smut girl, but the characters the backstory. All three of these books, this one may have been my favorite, but all three of them have fantastic characters who I want to meet again. Highly recommend. Next up is one that people rave about, and the author especially, and I've decided that I just don't get her. There is something maybe missing in me, maybe I'm not literary enough, but I liked the book that I read by her last year. I liked this book, but I just didn't get either of them the way other people seem to. And that is Claire Keegan's Foster. I liked it. I felt like I was missing something at the ending. At the end, I don't understand the hype because I don't get. I don't get it. I don't. Maybe I'm not literary enough. Anywho, I gave it 3 stars. I liked it. It was a good read. Better than the 2 that I ended the month with. I just think that I'm missing some gene or something that makes me not be so enamored of her books as other people. And if someone knows what that is, please explain it to me because I'd love to love her. So, went again with the Christmas theme, and an okay, light, not as good as some of the other palette cleansers, just an okay one, 3 stars for The Christmas You Found Me. That's all I've got to say. It's kind of forgettable. I like the romance book better. And this is good. Fine if you need a palette cleanser. So it is from September, please don't hate me if I get the dates wrong. I think it's 15th through October 15th is Hispanic Heritage Month. I could fuck that up too. So I chose to read What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez by Claire Jimenez, and I can't believe that I had kept this sitting on the shelf for so long. I loved this book. The characters spoke to me. I love siblings who don't get along, and I loved their mother. It was told from 3 different perspectives. It's all about a lost sister who at 13 does not come home from school one day, and they never give up hope that she's alive, and you have to read it to find out what happens at the end, and that is all I say, but I do recommend it. Loved this book. Next up, I guess we're going to call this Gothic. That was The Devil and Mrs. Davenport by Paulette Kennedy. I liked this. I think on Goodreads I gave it 3 stars. It's probably about 3.5. For me, there was an abrupt part in the middle where I felt like I should have had a little bit more. Not notice. It's fine for it to jump like that, but I should have had more. Maybe it was symbolic of about some things that happened in the second half. I just felt like I had missed something and I never got it back. But this was a fun read. It was a fun read. It's about, you know, the patriarchy and misogyny and men who are hypocrites and who say one thing but act like another. Mother Horror, loved this book. I liked it, but it was not. It was just fine for me. For my experience, it was just okay. Alright, next up. Since The History of Sound worked so well for me on audio, I decided to finish You Like It Darker by Stephen King, also stories, on audio. I had read probably maybe a third or closer to, I don't know, almost half. I don't know how much I read. I read some of the book before, but I was able to finish the last probably 7-8 stories on Audible, and yes, this was the way. I do have a comment though. I enjoyed all these stories. It's Stephen King. Some I like more than others, but it says it's called You Like It Darker, and I did not find these stories dark for the most part at all. And that's fine. Just don't call it You Like It Darker if it's not darker. Anywho, maybe it's just me. But a good solid group of stories. One of my favorites, aside from Rattlesnake, which I read Cujo last month in preparation for, no, I read Cujo sometime this year in preparation for You Like It Darker, so it might have been a couple months ago. I'm glad I did the reread of Cujo, which is up there as one of my favorite books of the year, because I would have missed so much from Rattlesnakes that I wouldn't have got it. So I'm really glad, and I'm glad I read that story, which I was first. The other story that I really liked was called Lori, and I actually had to skip like 30-second periods because I thought that something was going to happen that did not happen. Anyway, so I finished that up this weekend, and then I read The Naturals, because after The Devil and Mrs. Davenport, I needed something light and fun. So I read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is YA. It is about kids that the FBI recruits because they are natural at some kind of like profiling or something or another. Totally fun. Totally gonna finish the series. 4 books. Just what I needed. And a great, great time. I finished that too early and I was like, well, I don't want to start another book that I'm not, you know, I don't want to start another new book because it was still so early. Let me just finish my second fiction book for September. That book was Army Wives by Tanya Bianc. I put these. These are supposed to go in my weekend books for September, October, first week of October. And I just randomly throwing them around. Anyhow, finished Army Wives. I was determined to finish that by the end of the month. And I will talk more about it next week in my weekend books because I want to, go into a deep dive. I said in my short that we'll probably post, a week or so from, no, I think it already posted. Anywho, I said in my short that either the author made it up, which doesn't seem like a good journalism, or the women seem to give her some very, very intimate details that I would not be comfortable sharing with a random journo. Maybe everybody's different. I do, and I will spill the tea. One of the characters complains on Goodreads about this book. I'll tell you about that in my weekend books. So last night, being Sunday, the 29th, I finished up my final 2 books of the month. Today's the 30th. I don't plan to read anything. If I start something this evening, I don't plan to finish it this evening, so I gotta, hopefully, well, anyway, it's gonna go in next month. So I finished out with 2 short ones. One is The Prom of Miss Jean Brodie. This was cute. This is also, I'll talk more about this in my weekend books. I was distracted at the beginning, so it took me a little bit to get into the rhythm. And I tried to watch the movie with Maggie Smith, who passed away last week, and the same thing. And I turned the movie off because I decided to read Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud. This was like 88 pages. It is the first of a small trilogy, and again, I will talk more about it in my weekend books. Now, my screen has gone dark, so I'm going to wrap this up and tell you that I had a prolific month. I read so much, and it had its ups and downs. I'm hoping for a better October, but you can't predict these things. Some books are good, some books are bad for you, and some, it really depends on where you are at the time. I generally try to push through my distraction because I know that's me. Something's going on in my mind and I can't concentrate. But I'd love to hear about your September reading and your thoughts. Do you get distracted? Do you have books you have to push through because you know it's just you? What are your thoughts on some of these books? If you have anything that you'd like to hear about, a subject that I could do a Book Talk Tuesday on, please message me down in the comments, and I try to incorporate as much as I can. Sometimes I can't, but when people suggest something, I try to implement it, execute it, whatever. Anywho, that is it for me. Happy September. Welcome to October. I hope that everyone is in an area that is safe. Here in North Carolina, or western North Carolina, up in the mountains, has been utterly devastated. If you have a favorite charity that is giving to some of the affected areas about Helene, please give to them. I gave to a company that I purchased local meat from, and they are working with an organization that is providing aid to western North Carolina. They desperately need it. They've got no cell service, no power, no water, no gas, sometimes even no home. So I just wanted to do a shout out for that. That is it for me. Happy reading.